Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Rimworld adventure in the Cold Bog with the Cult of Jingz. Last time we left off, after evolving the Cult of Jingz once more, picking the rancher meme, we also began the hunt for another relic and we set up a gladiator-style fighting tournament to determine who gets the last spot in our colony. Today we're going to have the grand finale of that tournament, but things are starting off a little bit complicated as one of the two finalists suffers a crisis of belief and relinquishes his faith in the Cult of Jingz. Now, of course, we can't recruit him in that state, and even worse, the new ideology is one that features cannibalism, so Redini goes to work right away, and as you can see, one simple conversation already does wonders. One or two more of these and we should be good to go, and the same actually goes for our other finalist, who is still barely holding on to her old ways. And while we wait for that, we can quickly give out a new name. Spex's Garelentry has finally produced another medicine maker dryad, who will now go by the name of Slick, after the patron supporter of the same name. In the afternoon then, we can see it has begun to snow in the Cold Bog, and so, even though fall has just barely begun, we can already prepare for things to get cold. By the way, thanks to your feedback on the last episode, I have decided that we are not going to help out the Empire with this quest here. Taking on that many enemies and having to house 7 people for 11 days, that is just a bit too much for us at the moment, especially if we consider that food might actually become a bit of an issue in the next few days, as we will of course see fewer and fewer large animals with temperatures decreasing. On the bright side though, it appears as if we have timed our psychoid leaf harvest just right. You can see it here, we are up to almost 2,500 units at the moment, and if we have just a few more days of somewhat stable temperatures, then we should be able to increase that by quite a bit. In the evening, meanwhile, we are getting one step closer to our second to last recruit, as Redini here removes the last few bits of resistance from our psycasting prospect, who is therefore hopefully going to join us very soon. Except for a little animal revenge, the rest of the evening then remains uneventful, and so we begin the next day with the first problem solved. Our tough brawler warrior prisoner here is once again a believer in the Cult of Jingz. His cellmate will likely take one more attempt, meanwhile our psychoid harvest is up to roughly 3,500 units, and there are still a good number of mature plants waiting to be picked. It is unfortunately also already time to renew the psychic love bond between Took and Squigs, as the two of them have sadly not really grown any closer, despite being nudged in the right direction by our psycaster Freya. And just as Took starts making the first cups of psychite tea from those leaves, we have ourselves a new recruit, and of course our new and potentially very powerful psycaster needs a new name. And as always, we are going with the list of patrons in the naming rights tier and above for this, and this time the name Light was randomly selected, so congratulations and welcome to Liviana. Now Light is an abrasive psychopath incapable of caring, and with that should fit right in. However, most importantly, he is also psychically hypersensitive. And that is an amazing trait to have for any psycaster, as it makes a few psycasts quite a bit more powerful, and also gives Light an increased pool of neural heat. However, there is a bit more that we can do to turn him from a potentially powerful psycaster into an absolutely mighty one. And it begins with gear, where he can now put on an Eltex shirt, rope and skull cap, all stuff that we have collected over the episodes, and enough to boost his psychic sensitivity from 180 to 264%. And keep in mind, he is not even a level 1 psycaster just yet. However, that can hopefully be changed with another peeling of perception ritual. Yes, after Freya, Light will now also lose his sight, and with a bit of luck we should hopefully unlock the first psi rank to go along with it. And here we go, the eyes are bleeding and we have gained another ideology development point. Let's now see if a psi link is gained as well. Alright, there we are, the peeling of perception was satisfying and Light has gained the word of trust psycast. This is potentially useful for converting prisoners, but nothing spectacular, but then again none of the level 1 psycasts really are. His bleeding eyes are quickly patched up, and with that Light is back up on his feet, and we can take a look at a psychic sensitivity that has now been increased to 344%. At level 1, that already gives him a neural heat limit of 103, more than Specs, who is a level 6 psycaster, and we are far from done just yet. With our anima tree sporting a lovely 46 anima grass, we can immediately grab 2 more psycaster ranks, and just because light is new and potentially special, we will have all of our other nature-focused colonists attend as well. Just before midnight then, the next psycaster rank is unlocked, and I have actually installed a mod for this, simply because I don't want to be quite so helplessly at the mercy of chance anymore when it comes to obtaining new psycasts. That is why I have installed the Choice of Psycasts mod, but don't worry, a bit of RNG is still here, as we will only be able to select 1 of 3 and not from the entire list of new psycasts that have now become available. In my opinion though, level 2 is actually the weakest psycasting level, so I think we'll go with Blinding Pulse here, simply because it has some use for combat, and then we'll do a bit more naming, as a new Yuck has been born, who will now go by the name of Martin after patron Martin Alberts. And while we're at it, we can also name this Berrymaker Dryad here Tom after Tom 1922. The Woodmaker Dryad here will be named Yuri after patron Yuri Taradai, and we even have a new Grizzly Bear that I somehow overlooked, and that one will now be named Torbjörn after patron Torbjörn Axelsson. At this point, we can also take note of the fact that we have indeed made our first batches of psychoid tea, one of the safer drugs in the game, and once we have enough, we will actually have our colonists consume it regularly, as just a quick sip will raise the mood of our colonists and make them feel a bit more rested, and it will also reduce the rate at which they get tired. And if we avoid getting anyone addicted, then there aren't actually any downsides, and even if someone develops an addiction, then we should have more than enough to supply it. In the meantime though, let us continue on the psycasting front, where super-psycaster Light will now obtain his 3rd psycasting rank, and we are actually introducing another mod here, the Combat Psycasts mod, because I would really like my psycasters to be useful fighters, and vanilla psycast expanded was just a bit too overwhelming. With this mod installed, we can now choose the medium psychic slug at level 3, which is basically a psychic projectile. I am not entirely sure how powerful this is. The mod description lists a damage value of 32, which is about on par with that of a charge lance, but I don't know how exactly this behaves with stuff like armor penetration, for example. Still, at level 3 it's worth trying out, also because all the other level 3 psycasts except for Vertigo Pulse are not really worth it in my opinion, and we already have Vertigo Pulse on specs, so we're not losing anything. And perhaps to celebrate the arrival of our new super psycaster, Squiggs is now throwing a party. And speaking of partying, you can see it here, I have set things up in such a way that our colonists do in fact now consume psychoid tea once every 2 days. That is the safe interval where no one should get addicted. The benefits of consuming psychoid tea of course only last for 6 hours, but still I think this should be a productive balance. The party then comes to a sudden end as our former slave Robola also turns away from the Cult of Jingz and also turns towards cannibalism, but again Redini should be able to solve this, and it's not like she has a whole lot of other tasks to work on. In the late afternoon then, our anima tree is once again ready for the next linking ritual, and so Light now already receives his 4th rank as a psycaster. And no, I have not actually forgotten about his ritual scars. I do believe though that he has to earn those, and at least so far he hasn't really done anything to prove himself. And just as we receive the good news that Redini has successfully converted our 2nd fighting tournament finalist, it is already time to choose the next power for Super Psycaster Light, and we are going with Skip for this one. In my opinion, it is just one of the best psycasts in the game, and both Freya and Specs also have it for good reason, while the cool combat related stuff that we get from the mod we installed really only starts at level 5 and 6. By the way, now at level 4, Light already with a neural heat limit of 207, roughly 50% more than our level 6 psycaster Freya, who up until this point was by far our strongest psycaster. The night then remains uneventful, and on the next morning we can see both of our combat candidates are fully healed, at least to the extent that is possible without replacing anything. And with former slave Robola also converted back to the Cult of Jingz, I think it's time. Let us begin the grand finale, the final bark brawl to determine who gets the last spot in Liviana. The Thrombohorns are placed, our colony is assembled, and the fighters enter the tree temple. Just as a reminder, on the right we have an iron-willed misandrist heart attack survivor with a melee skill of 12, while her opponent will be a staggeringly ugly tough brawler also with a melee skill of 12. And that guy is likely the favorite here, although it is actually the misandrist who picks up the Thrombohorn first. However, before she can strike, our brawler grabs a weapon of his own and then also lands the first strike. Now they're going back and forth and neither one of them is equipped in any sort of armor, so every single blow here could potentially be fatal. Once again then, the two come to blows and this time they do not separate, and it is, as expected, our tough brawler who comes up victorious, stabbing his enemy to death and earning himself the right to the last spot in Liviana. Just in that moment, we also receive a quest that we will take a look at in just a moment. For now, thanks to someone dying, the bog brawl is good enough to actually earn us another ideology development point, and as a result it also refills the psi focus of all psycasters in the village. Now, the quest we just received, by the way, is for a legendary Viking grave. As you can imagine, this was added by the Vanilla Factions Expanded Vikings mod. And while going on an adventure to defeat Viking guardians and potentially recruit a legendary hero sounds interesting in theory, a 6-day travel time is unfortunately not as intriguing, at least not in the winter, and the quest will sadly expire before temperatures rise again. Then again, I do believe that our ranks in Liviana are properly filled now with 14 colonists, with number 15 about to join us soon. At the moment, he is still receiving medical attention, while his dead opponent is being eaten by our bears. Speaking of which, Bear Mama Clay Brown has given birth to another one of those, and so we welcome Tilly to our flock, named after patron supporter MJ Tilly. Over by the river, meanwhile, we begin the construction of yet another shack for our latest recruit. I had actually hoped for Took and Squigs to have moved in together by now, but it seems as if their feelings for each other might need just a bit more time to develop. And yes, food is indeed becoming a bit scarce at the moment, which is why we are also hunting small animals like raccoons and foxes. The next raid should then at least give our bears something to eat, while our colonists might actually have to switch from a meat-only to a berry-only diet, just so we have enough meat left to make kibble. Either way, for now the supply is holding, although we do have other problems to deal with, as our tough brawler recruit has just gone berserk. I actually wanted to have him patched up before recruiting him, but now it looks like we will have to come to blows once more. Let us hope that our pacifying squad does not deal any permanent damage. Okay, so our warrior is down, but it took quite the effort. Luckily though, nothing that Leafheart Kevin can't fix, and we are also not making the same mistake twice, so Redini immediately begins the recruitment. The resistance has already been reduced to 0. And there we are, badly injured but alive, our 15th and I think final colonist joins us. His new name, of course, also selected from the list of patrons in the naming rights tier and above. And so for colonist number 15 we welcome Wyatt, named after patron Wyatt Kane. And well, stats-wise, we already know what he's all about. A tough brawler with a melee skill of now 13. Put him into a heavy suit of armor and I think he will be able to withstand quite a bit of punishment. For now though, he won't be able to stand up to anybody though, being in pain shock and all. But once he recovers, I think we have ourselves a formidable melee fighter, and that might be very convenient, as the relic we are currently going after is a very powerful sword, and who knows, maybe Wyatt here proves himself worthy of carrying it. For now though, he is healing while his small shack is slowly being built, and then we once again have trouble arrive. Yes, it is time for yet another raid, and this time we are attacked by 3 groups of tribespeople at once. And not only that, among them we actually have Maniac's sister, and, potentially even more interesting, Squigs' husband. So if we're lucky, we can perhaps turn Squigs single again with this one, which might help out her interest in Took. For now though, let us assess the situation. We have 128 enemies coming at us from 3 directions, split fairly evenly, with the group of 50 from the west being the largest. And well, while we should be able to handle all of these groups individually, all 3 of them together could be a problem, and at this point in the series I'm not too keen on taking chances. So we will armor up with our 2 melee women, Redini and Thoraya. The latter is unfortunately still a bit injured from her encounter with Wyatt earlier, but for the upcoming fight a full suit of marine armor should hopefully hold her together. And with that, almost the entire colony assembles at the northern gate, while Freya holds up a door to the south, and Specs is also waiting here behind our walls, and as soon as the enemies start their attack, we get ready for another neuroquake. Yes, I think another 5-day coma and a -10 relationship penalty with all of the other factions is a fair price to pay for this one to be over quickly. With Freya holding up the door here, we have all of the attackers going for that, and so can hit 2 groups at once, while Freya herself can quickly skip out of dodge and avoid being affected. At this point then we can open up the door to the north to force the group that started there to return. The other two have already started to flee, and so the last 40 or so enemies here should be manageable. Our melee blockers in the front are supported by gunfire from the back, as well as by Freya, who continuously drops berserk pulses into the enemy ranks. And so, while Redini, Thoraya and Maniac suffer their fair share of injuries, we do in fact manage to send this group packing as well, and with that another major threat has been defeated. Just in that moment, our slave Robola goes berserk, and we'll deal with that in just a second. And while we are still out here, Chutney, Donut and Took can quickly hunt a Mega Sloth, but more importantly, we did in fact manage to kill Squigs' husband, so the path to a Took and Squigs relationship is wide open. First of all though, Squigs, together with Maniac and Redini, can try to pacify Robola, and well, let us just assume that Redini was sick of Robola's antics, as the pacifying turns a bit more violent than necessary, and Redini chops Robola's head clean off. And if I'm not mistaken, with that we have now actually lost our first patron-named character in this series. Keep in mind that Robola was already our slave once, but then rebelled, and well, it looks like it just wasn't meant to be. But on the bright side, that is more food for our bears, and on the following morning we have even more coming in, as some of our attackers are mysteriously still alive, and so Squigs is taking another prisoner here, while a geared up Wyatt is moving into his new home. And with a bit of medical care from Kevin, it doesn't take long until our prisoner is mobile again, which, believe me, is not a good thing for them, because it means that we can now help ourselves to another ideology development point with another public execution ritual. After all, I think both Light and Wyatt deserve to know exactly what kind of village they joined, although with Light sporting the psychopath trait and with Wyatt being an experienced warrior, I don't really think this comes as a shock to either one of them. As a matter of fact, a short while later, Light even receives a trait inspiration. He does, however, only have a social skill of 4, so I'm not entirely sure if this is good enough to replace Redini as our go-to negotiator. In terms of food, we actually also get lucky with yet another Mega Sloth on the map, and with the first one already butchered, our storage room is slowly filling up again, although the upcoming winter could definitely be an interesting one. For today, with another night setting across the Cold Bog, I think we have reached a good point to make the cut. However, I'd like to discuss something here before we wrap things up. Now, as I've said a few times throughout this episode, I think our final roster of colonists is set. Yes, we could always recruit more, but I think we would slowly but steadily run into the territory of diminishing returns. In terms of technology and overall construction projects, I think we have also reached some sort of limit at the moment, and after the last episode we are now also sporting a fully developed 4-meme ideology. I guess what I'm trying to say is that all signs point towards this series slowly coming to an end. Yes, I would still like to grab that last artifact, but other than that I don't really have that much more on my to-do list, except for the unfortunate fact that we are still extremely far away from the wealth limit for the Arconexus quest, which sits at 350,000 silver. At the moment we are hovering around roughly 150,000, so I would like to wrap things up today with a small proposal. What would you say about installing a small mod to reduce that limit down to 200,000 just for this first of 3 times we need to do this? I honestly think that staying at this tech level will make it more or less impossible to actually reach that wealth limit of 350,000, and even if we do get there, it would be one hell of a grind, and I'm not entirely sure if that would be all that entertaining to watch, not to mention that I doubt it would be much fun for me to play. So my proposal would be to go down to 200,000. Keep in mind that we also still need to ally ourselves with a faction that has now gone through 2 neuroquakes, so they might not exactly see us in the friendliest of lights. Doing that would then allow us to grab the first Arconexus map and close the book on this first chapter of the series. We could then take a short Rimworld break and start things off with chapter 2, which I would of course also use to finally play the biotech expansion on the channel. So let me know what you think about that. Maybe I'm overlooking something here, but I personally think it's a good idea. So let me hear your thoughts in the comments down below, and in the meantime I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.